From the Skyterra Wellness Retreat, this is the Inspired Intentions podcast, where we help people build the skills and mindset to live a healthy life. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's episode, if you've been enjoying our podcast, take a moment to rate and review. It may seem like a small thing, but our ratings and reviews make a huge difference in the quality of our show. They help us reach more listeners like you so we can continue bringing you more amazing content. So, if you've found inspiration, learned something new, or just love tuning in every week, please rate the Inspired Intentions podcast 5 stars and leave us a review and even share with a friend. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now let's get into the show.
Hello, Inspired Intentions listeners. As usual, the best part of the podcast happened before we started recording. So today in our podcast booth, we have been talking about toys that we used to play with as kids. And this started with this idea of yo-yo, which we're going to talk about in the episode. And so we started talking about yo-yos, and then we started talking about slinkies. And I distinctly remember setting up my slinky at the top of the stairs and letting it go down the stairs. And I feel like life was so much simpler.
Yes.
Then, hi, Greg.
Yes, hello.
Anyhow, thanks for joining us today, listeners. And we are also joined by longtime podcast guest, Greg Osler.
Hello, excited
Hi,
to be
Greg.
back.
Thanks for coming back on. As always, your episodes, I feel like, are going to be chock full of knowledge, selfishly for me and also for our listeners as well. So thank you so much.
Of course.
And for folks who haven't heard you yet, could you reintroduce yourself and who you are and what you do for Skyterra?
Absolutely. So my name is Greg Osler. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and licensed clinical addiction specialist. I've been doing this work for about 12 years, and I've been at Skyterra for 4 years, which is wild to think about.
Yes.
Coming into Skyterra, I created the therapeutic program and made therapy appealing and exciting for adults, adding it as a 5th pillar to Skyterra's programming. And in that time, in the last 4 years, we were able to create a young adult program. I ran that, and I am currently acting as clinical director of Skyterra programs and do all things mental health, trauma, attachment, addiction, all the things.
Yeah, and just to underscore how important that is, I think, so many times we have guests who come to Skyterra looking to work on one issue. A lot of times it's weight loss. Sometimes it's not. And, what we found is that there's always underlying issues that need to be fixed that you help our guests address through therapy. So thanks for all the work that you do.
Of course.
So you are also a former Slinky owner.
I am. I had a slinky. I never was able to actually get it down the stairs in that fashion you're talking about. It would just be in the hand like a worm or a caterpillar going back and forth.
Did you have carpet on your stairs? Because I feel like the carpet was we had like
you
really,
needed carpet?
I think you did, because we had really like low pile carpet, almost like Berber carpet.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it went down the stairs really easily.
I think that's a fake action. I don't think slinkies really do that. I think I don't know. I just haven't been skilled in the ways of slinkies like you have, Rachel.
I did not expect the podcast to start in this direction, but here we are. Okay, but today our topic is not toys from the 1980s. It is mental health checklist. So we were trying to think of what to do to bring you back on, Greg, and something that I think is going to make this episode really approachable is just simple things that you can do on a regular basis to make sure that you're taking care of your mental health. And so you are going to educate all of us. But just to kind of set the stage for all of us, when folks come to Skyterra, just kind of how we've already addressed, they usually are coming for, maybe they want a reset from life or they want a healthy vacation. And they start to figure out that there's other things that they need to work on. So what do you notice with our guests, and what does that look like from your perspective?
Oh, I think there's a lot of, I don't know, maybe hope. I think there's a lot of optimism around the idea of, hey, I'm going to leave where I'm at, and I'm going to enter this really cool program that I'm committing my time and energy and my whole week to, and I want change. And as you said, Rachel, there's a perspective of I want to change the way I move my body. I want to change the way I eat. And as guests are engaging, we will see that there's like an ebb and flow of insight and introspection and perspective taking, and they're able to look and say, oh, here's the trigger. Here's the underlying piece, becomes a mental, emotional, psychological component that I get to address, where we then look at how does this trigger affect the brain? How does the brain then result in the behaviors and patterns that we're looking at that become almost a regulatory, air quotes, medicating approach. And I think that's where we get lost. Our guests get lost in the idea of how do I do this better? How do I do this the right, the healthy, the best way? And whether they're coming to Skyterra again or for the first time, I think they've tried stuff in the past. All of our guests have attempted to engage or live or behave differently. And for one reason or another, it didn't work or has not been consistent. And so a big focus that we were able to take with them is the preparation and maintenance of that yo-yo lifestyle. I'm doing it. Oh, I'm not doing it. I'm distracted. I'm busy. I don't have time for it. Oh, I got to get back on the train. And so being able to see that go up and down, we're able to really bring in our 5 pillars, help guests understand that it's not just about the food or the weight loss or the healthy living. It's a combination of all of them that creates that lifestyle.
And that yo-yo effect, this is actually how we got on the topic of the toys.
Yeah.
That yo-yo effect of I'm going to go to Skyterra. I'm going to be in this bubble where everything is programmed for me.
Yeah.
And then I think I'm going to change my life. And then I go home and I struggle. And is that because there has been a lack of addressing that underlying?
Well, I think, yeah. I think there's some of it. But also, if I don't know what I don't know, how can I address it? And so I think there is a huge benefit to some of Alan's classes, Inspired Intentions and Home Plan specifically, that allow us to slow down that process of what are we really looking for and what's the 1 or 2 things we can focus on rather than losing X number of pounds, because we know that it didn't start overnight. This weight did not just come on and I woke up this morning and I was frustrated with it, so I came to Skyterra. It's a lifestyle that's been consistent, and how do I challenge that? How do I address the underlying there? Because I'm looking for safety, I'm looking for comfort, I'm looking for what is easy, and I don't necessarily have the time to put into the consistency. I don't have time for maintenance. And so when we see guests come, they're full of hope. When they leave, I think one of the things that they struggle with is, how do I take it home? How do I apply this in my environment at home where I came from, where I struggled? And I think some of the guests have maybe a little bit of false hope of, hey, I come to Skyterra and I fix the problem and I go home and it's gone. And so being able to slow it down and be able to say, hey, let's unpack that a little bit, and let's be able to say, what are the areas of struggle? What are the patterns of struggle? Who are the people that struggle? And then with me, we get to get into the triggers. We get to get into, well, what is this really about? Because, in mental health, we have a ton of opportunities to take medication. And what's it really doing? It's addressing the symptoms so I feel better. It never actually tackles the underlying piece where the skills are, where the time commitment really lies, because it's where the work is. And if I'm already going to work, I have to take care of all my responsibilities, don't have time for it. That's one of the big things that is sacrificed, is wellness and health, because it doesn't really bring the same effect as being able to check that box of, hey, I made dinner. Doesn't matter what it is. No, it's I ate. And I went to work, and now I have to figure out how to go to sleep. And so I think there's so much of it where if we don't have balance, if we don't have an opportunity to slow down and really challenge that underlying piece, then it goes missed. And then we come to Skyterra and have these conversations, and guests struggle when they go home and they're shocked. A lot of guests are surprised when they go home and they're like, well, why isn't it fixed? And I think that's where we didn't hit the underlying piece.
Okay.
The guests didn't come in and they didn't tackle that piece because it didn't, I think it requires discomfort to hit that.
Yeah.
It requires being vulnerable, being willing to say, hey, this is my concern, this is my issue, this is my problem, without beating yourself up. Because if the guests come in and they say, hey, this is where I suck, and then they beat themselves up all week and try to work themselves through it, they're going to go home and struggle because they're beating themselves up and have negative self-talk.
Yeah.
But if they come in with curiosity, they come in, build confidence, build awareness of their body, all of a sudden they go home and they do it different, which in turn will change behaviors and environment a little bit differently.
And so the checklist that we have for our listeners today, the daily, the weekly, the monthly checklist, is that what you're suggesting will help either bring these issues to the surface so you can address them, or once you've addressed them, kind of keep them managed?
I think yes to both. I think this is I don't know, I'm going to call it a pretty universal, adaptable structure. Because it brings awareness to what I want to be doing rather than fighting against what I'm doing and the behavior I don't like that I'm doing, because I'm disappointed, I'm frustrated, I struggle, I don't like that this is what I'm doing over and over again. And so this new way of doing it, I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, of doing little Post-it notes.
Yeah.
And that's all these are. These are little reminders, little pieces of how do I want to behave and how do I challenge my current behavior because I want to do better. But it's not just this idea of I want to, it's I can. And so it challenges that negative self-talk, because the Timmy in my head, my self-conscious says, hey, let me tell you all the things that you did wrong. Let me tell you all the things you're doing wrong constantly. And it gets exhausting.
Yeah.
That's going to be a huge motivator killer. It's going to decrease my energy. It's going to decrease my desire. And so focusing on where we get simple. Small and simple makes the biggest change. And one of the phrases I love comes from the military: slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So let's go ahead and just put everything together in one pile, take a look at it, increase awareness, and then start picking and pulling and figure out where it applies. And then leave whatever we're not going to take with us here in this environment that is neutral, that is supportive, that is validating, so it doesn't get in the way at home, because you're going to trip right over it once it's covered over by everything else that we have to do at home.
Yeah.
So.
And so I know we've talked before about the process that we use for our podcasts. And, Greg, I reached out to you. Alan and I had this idea of like mental health checklist. Reached out to you to just, let's plan this out. Like, what is this going to look like? I don't know if I had scheduled us to be on the phone for half an hour. I think we were on the phone for 10 minutes, because you were like, yes. And I almost felt like I pressed play and you just were like, blah, 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 like, this is what we're doing. This is something that you knew, it was at the front of your mind. So is this something, like, are we getting secret information? Is this something that you work with guests on, or is this just something that you use every day?
I would love to say that I do this every day, but I think as we'll go through this checklist, we'll understand that there are pieces that become the priority. And one day I might focus on one of the things on the checklist. The next day I don't focus on that as much, because I need balance across the week. And so the big part is, do I get a little bit of this every day, or do I get a big chunk every couple of days? And I think that's some of the secret of it. It's what works for me in my environment, in my responsibilities in my life. But I'm going to say this is very basic structure. These are very basic tools, skills that I think they come so readily. It's everyday conversation that we have with guests, that we have at home with my own children. It's how are we living our best life, and how are we taking control? And so I don't know. I think there's a lot of slowing down and creating simple that I think gets overlooked, because if it's that simple, then why didn't I do it already? And we start beating ourselves up, and so it can't be that simple. Becomes some of that rhetoric,
Right.
And so I'm excited to challenge it today.
And then before we get into the checklist, it's almost like we're building suspense. Greg, would you say that this checklist is applicable to all ages? Because, of course, we have Skyterra Wellness, and we also have Skyterra Young Adult for ages 18 to 29. Is this something that you see with all guests that you work with?
The really cool part is this is a very across the lifespan lived experience, because some of these things we've been teaching children in preschool and before preschool even, and then we're doing it for elderly. We're doing it for the older folks as they age and they transition through. And so it's a whole lifetime experience that I love about it. But it's also, how do I use this to my level of ability? And how do I not look at, let's look at Greg and say, how does Greg do it? Well, I got to do it the same. And challenging that piece too, because we won't do it the same as our neighbor. We won't do it the same as our friends. And so as we're going through these lists, being able to really say, how do I take this? How do I apply this? Because some of the stuff may not apply. And that's a really important piece. If it's not what you want to be doing that you're not going to commit to, then wait. Commit to one or two of the things and then try them and practice them and then come back and say, what else can I add? Because it gets overwhelming. It gets exhausting having to have 8 things on your checklist when you can barely get one of them started.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do it. So this first checklist is things that you should be doing every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So this, Skyterra Wellness has 5 pillars. We have recreation and adventure, mindfulness and yoga,
Fitness
and mobility, culinary nutrition, and self-care and stress management. And I think if we looked at those pieces, they are part of every single day. And if we simplify them a little bit, get outside, eat 3 meals, engage in some type of breath work, wake up, go back to bed, and move your body a little bit. And I think we hit those pretty easily. My children hit them every day without my guidance. My parents hit them every day without my guidance. And that's where the whole across the spectrum, the whole lifetime works, because I think we think about mobility and fitness as you go to the gym, you lift your weights, you get stronger, you sweat, you go home. And I think the really important part around doing these every day is simplify so that you can actually get them done and use what you have around you so that it's not this arduous task to complete. I think we often think about it being the gym routine, but recreation and adventure and mobility and fitness can be, I'm going to go on a walk around the block, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's the fresh air and the sunshine that will do the magic for you, not the reality of the gym space. And there's another trainer there with you, or there's other people that are motivating you. Like, that's great. But get out and move your body. Eat your food, hydrate, sleep, and manage life. Be able to take a breath and slow down just a little bit.
Seeing these things that you should be doing every day, most of them are essential to just being able to stay alive. Which of these, though, would you say, if obviously I'm going to eat, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to fuel my body, I have to move. But is there something that you would say of what you're suggesting in this checklist for every day that's going to be something that requires the most mindfulness to focus on, or the most, being conscious to make sure that I'm doing it?
Mental health is a tricky game where if I'm not thinking well, if I'm not excited, if I'm not energized, it's going to be hard to do any of those 5 things on the list. And so I think it does take a little bit of mindfulness of doing it intentionally and on purpose. So if I'm going to eat 3 meals, I want to eat 3 meals that I enjoy. I want to eat 3 meals that I have time for. I get 3 meals that are balanced. Not I want to prep and cook and clean up and do all the things for 3 meals. And so I think reviewing responsibility and accountability and what my day looks like will help us kind of frame that piece. But I think eating on purpose is a really important aspect that is not focused on enough because we do it so mindlessly. We do it when we're busy. We do it during meetings. We do it when we're on the phone. We do it in front of the TV. And I think slowing down and being able to say, hey, am I really eating for me? I don't think we do. I think we eat to get the meal done. I think we eat to, sure, be nourished because we know it's the right thing to do. But I don't think we're actually aware of it. I don't think we pay attention to taste and flavor and textures. And I think that it's a lost art. But I think if we really slow down, most of us don't have time to spend 3 hours eating every single day because we have the rest of life happening. And so I think that's where we get lost a little bit. And then so in addition to nutrition, I would say that stress management and rest is a really important piece that we don't engage in as much as we should, because once I get rid of one stress, another one pops up and is triggered, because that's what life and responsibility is. And so slowing down, being able to figure out how I rejuvenate, how I reset, and what my social battery is, I think becomes a really important piece. And it's am I an introvert, extrovert, or mixtrovert? And how do I connect with the world around me in a way that I can manage? And if I have 2 hours of social battery, I'm going to spend 2 hours of social battery. And then I'm going to say, no, I'm going to set a boundary and take a step back. Or if I have 6 hours because I'm going to a concert or fun activity with my friends and I need to prepare differently, yesterday might have been different than it could have been. I may have preserved. I may have done a little bit of self-isolation or preservation so that I can work towards tomorrow. And I don't think we live day to day the way that we could. I think we live day to day to get a paycheck. We live day to day to get the next day done. And time is going so incredibly fast, it seems, that we get so far behind, and then we lose track of these simple items or behaviors that are the sustaining of life. I think we get lost in the chaos, and we're trying to create these healthy lifestyles, yet they become, I don't know, maybe too obscure, too difficult because we're not paying attention to it.
Greg, is there a question that we could ask ourselves at the end of the day, or something that we can remind ourselves in the morning to just check in on how we're doing on these things that we should be focused on every day?
Always. This comes back to my Post-it note activity.
Yeah.
So I love Post-it notes because they're colorful, they're small. And so my recommendation would be put 1 or 2 sticky notes around your house in places that you frequent. The bathroom mirror, the front room wall. And all it is an association with how do I want to behave, and this little sticker that's on the wall. It doesn't have to have any wording. I don't encourage written anything on it. Just blank sticky note that says, hey, how do I want to behave? If you set that intention for yourself, every time you see it, you will come back to, what's that for? Oh, yeah, it's this. And it's simple. And I do it with guests here at Skyterra. I've done it with young adult guests. They love it once they try it, but it seems too simple. They take it home, and it seems too simple. And their partner and their friends are like, why do you have all these stupid sticky notes all over the wall? And they're like, oh, it's just a reminder that I have. For what? To behave the way I want to behave and live my life. And so that's what I'm going to recommend.
Okay.
How am I behaving? And what's my little reminder? Some people have like the string on the finger, and some people have an elastic band around the wrist or a bracelet, something that is going to remind you and trigger that thought of, am I doing what I want to be doing?
I like that. Okay, so that was our daily checklist. Now we're going to move on. These are the things that we should be doing at least once a week.
Yeah. Yeah. So starting off, find a community, find your people. I teach a class at Skyterra about addiction. And one of the big conversations we have is that we get stuck in this behavior and pattern that works, regulates the body when I drink, when I use drugs, whatever it might be. And we often also think that the opposite of addiction is abstinence and sobriety. And the reality is the opposite of addiction is connection and community. Because if I have someone or something to engage with or in, I end up doing that. And then my brain is there instead of on whatever else is there. And so find a community. Create a group that you want to hang out with. You don't have to like everyone, but you get to spend time with them. And they're like-minded people. These are people that you like spending time with. They're people that have similar interests and hobbies. Rec and adventure is a really easy way to get out and find other people that like hiking, that like snowboarding, that like skiing, that like hiking, walking, or whatever it might be. Running groups are all over the place. And it's, if I don't like running, what can I do? Well, find a different group. Find a different group of humans who engage. And hopefully it's a little bit outside. My brother used to do this LARPing, this live-action role play with swords, and there were wooden swords, and it was the dorkiest thing. And I was like, I don't know.
Only the way a brother could put that into words.
He's a dork. But he has his people. He has his group of people. And I look at him, and I'm like, that's not mine. But it's okay.
Yeah.
We're not going to get along with everyone. And so it's a really important piece to step back and say, who are my people, and are they doing what I want to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And can I connect with them? It takes courage. It takes curiosity. It takes patience to deal with other people. But it's also, this is the community that's going to get me on that path of lifestyle that I really want to be living. Yeah. It's healthy. It's connected. It's committed. It's hopefully consistent.
Yeah. What else?
Big piece. I hit this in the last one too, but get outside.
Yeah.
Spend a little bit of time outside. If that means you drink your coffee on the porch, or you open the window in your office, or you walk from your house to your car, get outside, spend a little bit of time outside and get that sunshine. And there's so many vitamins and benefits with the just being able to be outside, whether it's just a cloudy day or a sunny day. Mm-hmm. It has the same benefit. And then find something I enjoy. Engage in activities, hobbies that you like. A lot of people will tell me they don't know what they like. Well, you haven't spent enough time doing it. So go and try it. Check it off the box if you liked it or not. If you didn't like it, cross it off. Don't do it again. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But go and try something. In connection to that, get rid of the phones. Limit our screen time. This is where this Post-it note works really well, because a lot of people are like, I watch too much TV, or I watch TV and I scroll on my phone, or I have music and I have my computer and I have all this technology. And a lot of people are like, oh, I need to put a sticky note on my screen so I can't see the screen. And I say, no, that's getting rid of autonomy. That gets rid of your desire or your ability to choose, and interferes and says, no, you can't do this. So if the body is told no, what's it going to do? Right?
Do the opposite.
Resist, fight back. If I say don't think about a pink elephant, what do? Think about a pink elephant, because that's what it does. So that being in your way is going to obstruct and create the lack of choice.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are on your phone too much, if you're watching TV too much, put that sticky note to the side of the TV. Put it in the front room where you usually hang out. Put it on the table. Put it somewhere that says, hey, how do I want to behave? And that then allows you to make a choice and slow down and do it intentionally. If you're going to turn on the TV, watch TV. It's fine. And at the same time, let's take a step back. Let's strip away some of that technology and engage in what we used to do, the old school stuff. Get the slinky out. Grab a yo-yo.
Slinky.
Be able to jump into stuff that didn't require, because technology has not been what it is very long.
Yeah.
You know, we look back 20 years, very different world.
Yeah.
And we look at how children are engaging, and we're engaging as humans today. Everyone's face is in technology because it's incredibly engaging. It's incredibly hypnotizing. And in that same way, you can get out and have fun with your friends, laughing, engaging. Very different dopamine exchange in the body, yet so much more, energizing, so much more encouraging, so much more fulfilling if we're
Yeah.
able to take that step back.
And back to your earlier point, as someone who moves around a lot to different cities, finding new groups of people is so much easier when you don't have your face in a phone,
Right.
because that's such a much easier way to connect with people, because you're having face-to-face conversation.
And it's disappointing how having a face-to-face conversation today is weird. It's odd. It's uncomfortable, and it's a foreign concept for so many people. And I'd rather text. I'd rather find an app for it. Rather than going to REI and finding a hiking group, I want to jump on Facebook and put a post out and see who responds,
Yeah.
because it becomes it becomes incredibly easy, very enabling. But we're getting trapped in that same pattern of I'm not really engaging. I am using my resources in ways that don't require me to actually get out and do anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Every Saturday morning, I like to do a skincare routine.
Okay.
And I block that time off for my self-care and pampering, and I
love it.
need it.
Yeah.
And I know that that was on your list for something that you should do every week, but it is like you cannot mess with that. And so I think, tell us about self-care.
Self-care. Self-care is I don't know, a convoluted concept, because a lot of people think it's selfish. A lot of people would say, hey, taking care of me doesn't let me focus on the rest of the world. And thankfully, we don't have to focus on everyone else. But we also use it as an excuse. I can't do self-care because I'm doing this. I can't I can't take care of myself because I'm here. I can't do that because I'm a parent. And we have all the excuses. One of the really cool parts, everything we've already talked about leads towards self-care and pampering. Being able to do what I want to be doing is self-care. Being able to eat 3 meals a day that I want to eat is self-care. Mowing the lawn can be self-care.
I like that.
Depending on what that is for you.
Yeah.
And that's where the list of self-care opportunities is so incredibly endless and universal that for those that are struggling with the addiction side of things, smoking is self-care. And it becomes this battle of, are we doing this intentionally? Drinking becomes self-care until it's not. And so I think there's a lot of that piece of, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it for me or is it for something else? Do I know why I'm doing it? Because self-care is intentional. Self-care is not mindless. And so it requires you to be able to set that time aside and say, I'm going to commit to this activity. I'm going to commit this much time to this thing, and then be willing to do it. And don't let things get in the way.
Yeah.
Because the reality is you can do your skincare routine on Sunday or Tuesday or whatever, yet you've committed to it. And I think if we had the same attitude around that as we do with, buying concert tickets, like there's a deadline to it. If I'm not available on this time, I'm not going to go.
Yeah.
And it's simple, and maybe even more simple than it really needs to be. But what is self-care? It's doing what you want to do, living your life. Be selfish for a minute. Be willing to do a little bit of self-preservation, set boundaries, communicate, be direct, get your needs met.
What do you do for self-care?
Oh, what do I do for self-care? This is where the therapist doesn't always do the right thing comes into play.
It's like a little peek behind the curtain. Let's see.
Like this is a great list, but again, it's how much do I do it? And so my self-care is often time with my kids, being able to provide for them. Cooking is my big passion. Being outside, anything outside, fresh air, sunshine. Mowing the lawn is one of mine. My son has recently started doing that, and so I go out there and coach him so that I'm also outside.
That's really cool.
It's that dad advice that everyone hates. It's like, hey, you're doing it wrong. You got to do this corner differently. And then my 8-year-old actually mowed the lawn most recently.
Cool.
And that was a headache and a half because I mowed it again afterwards because she didn't actually do it right. But it's that experience. It's the connection piece. And so connection for me is so much of self-care. Where if I'm with my people, if I'm with my tribe, if you will, if I'm with my group of humans, then that's what I want. Yeah. Because that's what rejuvenates. I'm also a very busybody. And so doing stuff, being busy, being everywhere is also part of that self-care piece. I don't nap because my brain gets all foggy afterwards. And I'd rather just be go, go, go. And so I start making plans. I start creating trips. I do a lot of prep really year-round for my November hunting trip. That's 1 week long, and I plan 365 days a year for it because it gives me something to look forward to. And so finding that joy and that passion has been a huge part of that self-care and pampering as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, last of this checklist. So this is now things that you should be doing at least once a month.
Mm-hmm. So this is a cool little piece because while we're doing the daily and weekly, we get to kind of plug these in where it fits with our schedules. And a couple of these, I don't know, I think they're maybe over talked about. They're overhyped. And the first one being goals, right? So many people talk about goals. We have New Year's resolutions that last until January 3rd. And it's what went wrong? Well, they're not really sustainable. They're not really structured the way they need to be. And so being able to break down some of those bigger tasks and responsibilities we have become those goals rather than I want to work out every day for 7 years or I want to run 1 mile a day. Like these little goals that we have that are, I think, pretty doable if we have the right idea of what our end goal is. I want to run, period. Not I want to run 7 miles a day, right? I want to work out a little bit. What does working out look like? What does that word even mean? Becomes a really important part. I want to eat 3 meals a day. Well, great. What does that structure need to be for you? Becomes part of that goal setting piece, and we don't structure it enough. We don't break it down enough, and we ultimately don't get that check mark at the end of it because we don't get it done. And a lot of that is the disheartening piece that gets us away from goals in general that starts to sabotage some of that experience. And so looking at the next 4 weeks, what do I need to do in 4 weeks? And what can I start today? What needs to be next week? What needs to be the 3rd week? What needs to be that 4th week so that I wrap up? But it's also how do I manage my time? So this becomes a really big, heavy executive functioning struggle with a lot of people because it's what is it? How is it? When is it? Where is it? And then trying to figure out how to put those all together in a formal approach to completion of a task. And I think unless we have expectations and deadlines from an external source, I think we struggle with creating that ourselves. Because, again, like if I'm going to a concert in October, I got to make sure I get tickets, transportation, put that in my schedule. And if I have something else come up, I have to choose between the two. And I think that's where those goal setting is. It's slowing down and being able to say, hey, what do I need to get done and how do I get that done? And then what can wait? Big part of goals is being able to say, hey, what's really the priority and what can sit around for a bit and not disrupt.
I like that way of thinking about it too. I think so many people probably approach maybe work like that because, here at Skyterra, we have meetings where we talk about very detailed plans that need to happen every day. And then we think about, at least from a marketing perspective, okay, we're looking at Skyterra's marketing as a year, and then what are we going to focus on each quarter? It's so easy to do that in a work mindset, but I love how you've taken that and applied it to life.
Yeah. So beyond that, I think getting our nose out of the phone is a really important piece and allow us to learn something and expand our intelligence, expand our mind, expand our curiosity just a little bit every month. Find something you don't know anything about or find something you want to know more about and read something. Do a little bit of reading. Do a little bit of exploration. Look for pictures. If there's an idea that you have, and I had this stupid idea of writing a parenting book. And so I wrote a board book. like 2 weeks ago.
Wait, why is that stupid?
It just seems foolish. I don't know. You can cut that out. But I wrote this parenting board book of sorts, and it was all just fun and games. It's like, what's the lived experience of being a parent from birth to
I think that's
autonomy?
a great idea.
You know, and I have it, and I've shared it with a couple of people, and they're like, "This is so good." And I look at it, and I was like, "This is so silly." But what I did was I went in and I said, "What do I want to learn? What is my role as a parent, and how do I apply that?" And I use those skills with searching Google with, hey, what are the images I could use for this idea of a teenage tantrum or toddler tornado or whatever it might have been, you know, and so I'm using those resources to grow, but I'm using my own information because I'm not, I don't know, like I'm intelligent. I know a lot of stuff. And so learning does not mean I have to go out and read a textbook. Learning is, how do I expand where I'm at, the knowledge I have? What if I learn one more thing? You know, what if I learned to tell one joke? What if I learned to drive? What if I learned to fly? What if I learned what the process was to do this one thing? Like, how simple can I be to still learn something? And I think if we really take a minute to think about what I know and what I don't know, the list of what I don't know is so incredibly long that it becomes daunting. But if you stop and you're like, what do I know though? What do I want to know more about that I already know information of? I think that ability to say, hey, let me find that growth mindset and challenge that I don't need to learn anymore because I'm not in school anymore, allows us to really begin to figure out how we really engage in any of these skills and tasks. But it's slow down and let's expand a little bit of that brain and use what we have.
I like your description too of, I mean, because that can be daunting. There is so much to learn, and not even what's the one big thing I'm going to learn, but what is the process for learning this? I think that's really interesting. What else?
Practice gratitude. Be positive. I do not support toxic positivity or the happy-go-lucky, fake it till you make it, because I think it creates a sense of hope for a lot of individuals where they become, I don't know, discouraged, disappointed because they thought it was going to be different. And so our thoughts, our actions, and our feelings have got to figure out how to connect a little bit. And if we're able to focus that energy cognitively on like positive reappraisal, all of a sudden we're looking for the excitement and anticipation in life rather than anxiety and stress, because we have stress, right? Life's going to happen. And if we can just turn that perspective just a little bit, all of a sudden we find that the sun rising today was an incredible feat and an exciting piece that I can celebrate, and that I get to go to bed at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, and what am I grateful for? Let it be simple. I'm grateful for shoes. I'm grateful for clothes. I'm grateful for friends. I'm grateful for anything we've already talked about on this podcast. I'm grateful for a schedule. Schedules suck sometimes. And can I still be grateful and look at it in a positive light?
Yeah.
I think another piece that we don't do super well in society is ask for help.
Yeah.
If we need help, we will use our technology and we'll Google it. Because what we've learned is that when other people don't want to answer my questions, they also say, hey, go ahead and Google that and see what you get. And so we become so reliant on it that we don't ask humans for help. And I think being able to seek guidance as help, be able to ask for advice, be able to say, hey, what's been your experience, is part of that guidance and help piece that we could utilize, because we need to know what other people have done before us so that we don't repeat some of those same patterns of consequence. And so I think slowing down and just being able to say, what do I need help with, becomes an important piece as well. And in that process, be able to say, how have I grown? You know, I'm asking for help. What would it look like if I did succeed? What would it look like if I was productive? And just kind of chunking that down just a little bit more so that it is simple and easy and digestible.
Marissa, who's our culinary director here at Skyterra, there are a lot of us at Skyterra who just have trouble asking for help, like most people. And Marissa has this beautiful thing that she says, which is community is letting other people help you the way that you help them. And when you think about it, we talk about community a lot on this podcast in so many different ways. And, asking for help is a gift that you give because it's saying, like, I trust you enough to ask you to help me with this.
Yeah.
Okay, Greg, so you have given people a ton of information. And so, of course, we always want folks to come to Skyterra. If you want more information about Skyterra, it's skyterrawellness.com. We also have our free website of resources, skyterra@home.com. But what else? Where do you suggest people start with all of this?
I encourage simplicity. You've heard me say simple 1,000 times today. I go back to the basics of sleep. When am I going to bed? When am I waking up? What am I doing before I go to sleep? What am I doing when I wake up? How is that process and routine? 3 meals a day, and how do I get my food? And what is my movement for today? Being able to say what it is rather than saying I have to get this gain. I have to, and so it's that piece of let's slow it down so that we really know what we're doing intentionally. And then everything else conveniently fits right around it. If I schedule myself breakfast and I commit to that, then everything else is okay. If I take my lunch break, it's okay. Life happens and life continues, and I don't have consequences when I slow down to eat. And when I commit to that time to move, being able to move my body, get my body mobile. And this is yoga, this is breathing, this is a walk, this is sitting on the porch and getting fresh air. It's every little bit that you can do will do you good.
Thanks so much, Greg.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners. Bye. The Inspired Intentions podcast is a production of Skyterra Wellness Retreat. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Subscribe on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be found. If someone you know might benefit from this podcast, share Inspired Intentions with them and give us a 5-star rating. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life. Thanks for listening.